Previously, I made a video exploring the first 20 years of this championship right here, and we talked about the downfalls and even discovered a few things that some of us may not have realized. But while it is fair to say that this belt has fallen from grace, that's not to say that absolutely nothing good has happened ever since the glory days of the Intercontinental title. And so, I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at the most recent 20 years and talk about some of the best things that have happened to the IC strap. And that's exactly what we're going to do, because today... Please support this channel by subscribing, and you could support it even further by signing up over on my Patreon page, just like with the Immortal Remus and Akari Garmin. Thank both of you so much, and the rest of my Patrons as well, as all of you really help, and I can't thank you enough. 20 years ago, in July of 2003, and Booker T was the WWE Intercontinental Champion. And this wasn't long after the belt had just been reactivated by Stone Cold Steve Austin, since the belt had been unified with the World Heavyweight Championship in October of 2002. Yeah, the past 20 years really didn't make it easy to be a fan of the Intercontinental Championship. But on a brighter note, it does seem like things are going a bit better for the belt right now. And so, let's focus on the positive. And speaking of which, please leave a like for this video and make sure that you're a part of the Thinking Fans channel as a member of the Know-It-All Nation by subscribing. Anyway, with that being said, let's get into the list, and let's get into some really recent history. Alright, let's not kid ourselves. Gunther is one of the best things to happen to the Intercontinental title in a very, very long time. His dominating presence and his winning ways have made sure that the Intercontinental Championship has once again become a premier title. And while it does seem like he's destined to beat Honky Tonk Man's record, something that's long overdue, I think we should take this time to make a small note that he still has yet to beat the record of Macho Man Randy Savage or Pedro Morales. Even though, as of this recording, he's only about 2 days away from beating Macho Man's and 2 weeks away from beating Pedro. Anyway, as for what's going to happen next and who Gunther's going to drop the strap to, well, that's anybody's guess. But for now, I feel like there's no denying the positive work that Gunther has been doing, even if a lot of people wish he did it as Walter instead. Now, as good as the ring general is, we have to admit it takes more than one champion and one championship reign in order to completely restore a division. And so, here's hoping that whatever happens next with the Intercontinental Championship is every bit as good as what Walter's doing, if not better. While I do continue to stand by the statement that it's the wrestler that makes the championship and not the other way around, we do have to remember that sometimes it's not even a champion but a championship bout that really does make a difference and helps to elevate a title. Okay, so 2020 wasn't a good year for, well, anybody, and a lot of things were going on. But out of all the things that happened, one such thing was that Sami Zayn had to vacate the Intercontinental Championship. But who's gonna win this vacated strap? Well, that came down to a match between two absolute masters who put on one of the best clinics that wrestling ever saw. Okay, so this might be a time period that most of us want to forget about, but I will say that we should always keep a special place in our minds for AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan for the vacated Intercontinental Championship that happened on June 8th, 2020. With no fans in attendance during a time period where everybody was losing their minds, it was great to see really good wrestling, and that's exactly what we got when we saw the phenomenal one take on D-Bride. Oh, quick side note, I'm personally not the biggest fans of former world champions competing for mid-card championships. And yes, I know Pedro Morales was one of the first Intercontinental champions, but that was different because he was helping to establish a brand new belt. Anyway, even though I'm not a fan of the practice, I feel that there's no denying that AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan definitely belong on this list. And in recent times, we also kind of have to take what we can get. Speaking of Daniel Bryan, how could we forget that Miz promo where The Miz shot off against Daniel Bryan on an episode of Talking Smack? This happened on August 23rd, 2016. And while Daniel Bryan wasn't wrestling at the time, this promo still ignited the Intercontinental Championship division more so than it had been in years. Not only that, but it also gave us another side of The Miz, one that we could take a lot more seriously, which I would say is more preferable than the over-the-top cartoon character that he usually plays. And as far as as I'm concerned, it's this version of The Miz and his outburst that got not only himself but also the championship to become exactly as he wanted, way more relevant. Now I know, a lot of people out there really hate The Miz, but if you ask me, that Talking Smack promo was one of the best things, if not the best thing that he's ever done. And as such, I have to give credit where credit is due, and I say that The Miz has been one of the very best friends that the Intercontinental Championship has had in recent memory. Now, speaking of that Miz promo, how exactly did that title reign come to a close? Well, if you remember, it happened in spectacular fashion, as The Miz would defend his championship at No Mercy against Dolph Ziggler in 2016 on October 9th. But it wasn't just the Intercontinental title that was on the line, but it was also Dolph Ziggler's career, as the stipulation was if Dolph Ziggler couldn't capture the gold, then he would have to retire. Now, of course, this was just kayfabe. However, behind the scenes, there were rumors running rampant on the internet that Dolph Ziggler's WWE contract was running out and he was considering not re-signing. And so, IWC smarks everywhere were watching this match with bated breath, as this result would be the telltale sign whether or not the show-off would be staying or going. Now, of course, this all could have just been a bunch of internet hooey, but nevertheless, it got fans hooked enough to make this easily one of the most anticipated matches of the entire night, which was only made even more true considering that the WWE title match went on first and the main event was a non-title match between Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt. And in hindsight, the only way this could have been any better is if this match did main event, because quite frankly, it really did deserve to. And okay, Dolph Ziggler's reign with this belt really wasn't very good and it only lasted 37 days and it would wind up just going right back to The Miz anyway. But as I said, it's not always about the champion or the championship reign, as sometimes a really good match needs to stand all on its own. Okay, so last time, one of the myths that I dispelled was this idea that the Intercontinental title was a stepping stone championship. But while that myth has already been dispelled, I do think it's important to talk about some of the wrestlers who almost kinda made it feel like it was true the past 20 years. Sort of. Considering that it took about 10 years in between Drew McIntyre becoming Intercontinental Champion and him becoming WWE Champion, it's hard to say that this belt really was a stepping stone for Drew. But nevertheless, the title reign, at least overall, was a good showcasing of the belt, and it did help to develop Drew to that next level, even if it had to happen in TNA first. And while the reign didn't conclude in the best possible way, with Kofi Kingston getting a dusty finish on May 7th, 2010, only to go on to actually win it on May 23rd, 2010, the bulk of it, I say, still worked. Okay, so sometimes it's not just about the champion and it's not even just about the championship match, but rather it's about the championship belt itself. Now, even though Cody Rhodes would have a really solid reign with the Intercontinental Championship, and he is a two-time IC champ as well, for me, the most vital thing that the American Nightmare ever did for the belt was bringing the old one back, which he did in October of 2011. And even though WWE would go ahead and undo this decision, well, I think it's safe to say we can all agree that this was a bad idea, as I'm sure I'm not the only one that misses the real design of the Intercontinental title belt. Which is this one, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong. And okay, sometimes it is still about the champion, as was the case with Randy Orton, who ironically, considering what he was back then, would become the stuff of legend. Now, I'll be the first to admit that Randy didn't exactly have the most stellar title reign, but the reason why he's on this list is because he really feels like he was the last of an era. And sure, while there had already been plenty of floundering IC champs by the time that the Viper got to the strap, I still say it was Orton who was the last of his kind. He felt like a natural choice to win the Intercontinental title, and you knew he was someone who was just earmarked for greatness. And seeing that he first won the Intercontinental Championship at Armageddon in 2003, and less than a year later he would become World Heavyweight Champion at SummerSlam, it just goes to show that this is the exact trajectory that you want an Intercontinental champ to have. Well, there you go, my picks for the 7 best things to happen to the Intercontinental Championship over the most recent 20 years. What are your picks? Let me know down in the comments, and please make sure that you're a subscriber to this channel, as I really do appreciate it. And speaking of appreciation, thank you to all my wonderful Patreon supporters out there, and as always, Dave knows.